We often think of prison as a safe place for prisoners to rehabilitate themselves before being released into the free world. Though there have been several prison escapes over the years, some of which have been caught on camera. Before we get started, be sure to hit that like button and ring the notification bell for more great videos. This escape took place in California and could easily have been a scene out of a Hollywood film. The two men who escaped this prison used bed sheets and an air vent to make their escape, though the best part is that they filmed the entire event. The two had access to a smartphone that had been smuggled into the prison. We don't know how they managed to get the phone, and we honestly don't want to know either. Regardless, they filmed their escape from beginning to end and posted it online. They began their escape by removing an air vent in one of their cells. They worked their way inside the vent, exposing them to the inner walls of the prison. Once inside, there was at least 4 layers of rebar that they needed to cut through to make their way through the air vent system. They appear to have made use of a homemade saw to cut through the thick metal, removing all of the unnecessary bars in a matter of minutes. They finally exited the prison on the roof, climbing down a series of bed sheets that they had torn and bound together. Once outside, they were on the run for about a week. They hid in various areas of the nearby city, evading capture and enjoying their vacation away from prison. Interestingly, the prisoners used this time to compile a video documenting their escape, even going as far as narrating the video and taunting authorities. This proved to be a bad move, as the video was used as evidence in their court case once they were eventually captured. If the men had just remained in their prison and served their sentence, they would have likely been released in just a few years. However, following their escape, they'll now be facing several additional years in prison for their escape and the resulting destruction of property. We don't know how these two expected that they wouldn't be caught, but it seems as though justice prevailed as these criminals are once again behind bars. A prison fire is likely the greatest chance of escape for any inmate. This is likely what led to the fire that started in a Guyana prison. The cause of the fire was difficult to determine though, as some have theorized that the fire was started by prisoners in an attempt to escape their fate. As the fire broke out, guards were preoccupied with trying to extinguish the blaze. So much so that they forgot about many of the inmates, prompting them to escape the prison amid the blaze. Though the foolishness of the guards did not end there. Some of the prisoners were rounded up and taken away from the property in the beds of pickup trucks. Though they were not restrained with these trucks, this caused dozens of inmates to simply jump off the trucks and run to freedom. The chaos that ensued during the fire has largely been blamed on the prison being dramatically overpopulated. There are known to have been at least 1,000 prisoners in the building when the fire began, and we can assume there were likely only a few dozen guards. Footage from the fire was captured on camera from various angles, showing many of the prisoners attempting escape. While the majority of the building was completely engulfed with flames, passers-by gathered around to watch the building burn, offering very little assistance in keeping the prisoners at bay. To make matters worse, some of the prisoners were able to gather up weapons in the blaze, leading to serious injuries for many of the individuals involved. We know that many of the prisoners were likely rounded up after their escape, though it's unclear if all the escapees were later apprehended. Interestingly, this wasn't the only fire that had taken place on the prison grounds. Just a year prior, a large fire caused at least 17 inmates to lose their lives, and many more are expected to have been injured. It seems as though this prison has a serious problem with prisoner mischief, but let's hope that they now have increased security to help keep the prisoners locked away. This prison break is one that'll likely be written about in history books for many years to come. 2 inmates put their minds together to devise an incredibly well-planned escape from the Clinton Correctional Facility. They used a set of power tools to escape their cells after cutting various holes in the wall and maneuvering their way to freedom. They used a series of underground tunnels to their advantage, using pipes to climb to freedom. What's very interesting is that this prison had previously gone 150 years without a successful prison escape. However, these men put that feat to rest in a matter of hours. One thing that the guards are still unsure of is how the prisoners managed to get their hands on power tools. Smuggling something like a phone into a prison is perfectly understandable. However, it would be much more difficult, maybe even impossible, to smuggle in something as large as a power tool. The best guess is that a maintenance worker may have left the tool unattended, leading an inmate to steal it. Though even if that were true, it doesn't explain how other inmates or guards would not have heard the prisoners drilling through the steel walls of their cells in the late hours of the night. All in all, the escape has baffled both guards and investigators, and no one is entirely sure how they managed to pull off such an impressive stunt. Once the prisoners had made their way through the underground tunnels, they popped up on the outside using a manhole cover that connected to the facility. The guards were blissfully unaware that the prisoners had escaped until the 5:30 a.m. roll call the next morning. As it would turn out, the two had used mannequin heads in their beds to trick officers into believing they were asleep. They also included a note that simply read, "Have a nice day." What the prisoners didn't know was that the pipes they used to escape the prison could have easily emitted a dangerous amount of piping hot steam at any given moment. This steam could have very easily burnt them and caused life-threatening injuries. However, they somehow made it through the tunnels and escaped without ever being harmed. This is one of the most unique prison escapes we've ever heard of, and it took place in Santa Fe, New Mexico. A man was seen walking along a desert highway heading away from Santa Fe. He was not wearing any shoes and appeared to be in rough shape. This led to many vehicles passing by to call the police, requesting that they check on the man and see if he needed any assistance. Police arrived a short time later and spoke with the man, offering him a ride back to Santa Fe. They were unsure if he was mentally ill or homeless and insisted that the man come along with them. He declined at first, but hesitantly accepted their proposal a short time later. He hopped in the back of their car and they headed toward a homeless shelter that would provide him with food and shoes. Along the way, police were called and informed of an escaped inmate who police believed would likely be found roaming the streets of Santa Fe. As you can probably infer, this man was the escaped inmate. Police were very calm with the man. They didn't express any anger or aggression toward him and gently explained that they had reason to believe that he had recently escaped prison. Although he denied these allegations, it didn't take long for police to link him to his prison profile, returning him to prison once more. When questioned about the event, it was learned that the inmate had just walked out the front door of the prison. He had gained access to civilian clothes, thus helping to disguise his identity. Once he changed out of his prison uniform, he was able to walk out the front door without ever being caught. He then continued his way toward a nearby city. Police, investigators, and prison personnel were forced to revisit their security measures, with local officials helping to ensure that a situation like this didn't take place again in the future. Several local prisons were placed on lockdown, while security measures were reviewed. This bizarre prison escape is one of the most strange we've ever seen. A man managed to escape his prison cell, though he didn't do so by cutting holes in the wall or picking a lock. Rather, he was able to squeeze himself through a small hatch that was located on the door of his cell. Thankfully, the event was captured on CCTV, allowing security personnel and viewers to watch his incredible escape. The man was incredibly thin, making his escape far more feasible than it would have been for an average-sized person. He leans his head through the small hatch, then his upper body and arms. Before long, he can reach through and pull the remainder of his body through the hatch and into the hallway of the prison. Interestingly, he decided to do this while completely nude, seemingly because his clothes could have easily become caught on the hinges of the hatch. The footage cuts off before we can see if he was apprehended by officers, but we can assume he didn't make it very far while running butt naked through a prison. We can't figure out what this man must have been thinking to attempt such a thing.